Welcome to another Big Game Indicating Dogs live Q&A. So these Q&As are held in the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle. And the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle is a closed Facebook group for people who are following the Deer Dog Training Blueprint. And the Deer Dog Training Blueprint is a 12-part, 15-hour video series with everything you need to train your own deer dog from start to finish. Whether you're starting off with a new pup or you're retraining an older dog, it's all there. And the blueprint just follows me, and we filmed everything I did to train my own dog from start to finish, right from before I picked it up as a pup, explaining how and why I chose the dog I chose. And then we actually take you out the day I picked the pup up, and I film it right there explaining why I chose it, everything I do right from day one, over about an 18-month period. We just film everything I did with that dog the first time I did it, right through all its training, right through to it was about 15 months old. That dog was print. And then in the blueprint, we also go out into the field and I filmed the shooting of Print's first 9 deer, breaking down all the hunting as well. So it's just everything's there from start to finish, basically following everything I did to train a dog. You can find out more about the Deer Dog Training Blueprint and Big Game Indicating Dogs at biggameindicatingdogs.com, at Big Game Indicating Dogs on Facebook and Instagram. And if you're watching this video on YouTube, you can also find it on YouTube, Big Game Indicating Dogs on YouTube. And if you're watching the video version of this Q&A on Facebook or YouTube, you can also listen to all the audios of these Q&As and lots of other stuff on the Paul Michaels Revolution podcast, which is available on all the good podcast apps. Right, so we've got a few questions here. Every time I do one of these, I throw a new post up in the inner circle, and for people to ask their questions for the next Q&A. We've got a few good questions here. Man, I just want to say how awesome everyone is in the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle. There's, how many people are in there now? Last time I checked, there was so there's about 370 members in there, all people that have followed the blueprint. And it's just a really good community. Everyone's on the same page, everyone's following the same system, and people are asking questions in the inner circle and you know, sharing success stories, and when they shoot their first deer or when they have a good hunt over their dog and they're posting it in there. And but people that are just starting out on the blueprint are asking questions, and we've got hundreds of people in there that have been following the blueprint for up to a couple of years and have shooting deer over their dogs and listened to all the Q&As, and there's a lot of people that are becoming really experienced dog trainers in their own right, and they're all on the same system, and everyone's answering each other's questions. Like someone will ask a question, and a whole heap of people jump in giving great answers, and I'm reading through the answers thinking, man, that's what I would have said, you know, which is awesome. So just a big shout out to everyone in the inner circle, and I'm just really stoked on how good a community it is and how good a job everyone's doing supporting all the new people coming along asking questions. It's really cool. Right, so Mark Thaxton. I'm always struggling with names in here. I'll give them a go, but I'll probably really get them right. Mark, hi Paul, any thoughts on working indicating dogs at very short ranges? 1 to 2 meters effectively at heel. Okay, so he's looking for advice at working an indicating dog at short ranges, 1 or 2 meters, effectively at heel. So hey, while I'm here, guys, how's the sound on this? Just want to refresh this. G'day, Brad. Brad's here. Someone said, great. Does that mean the sound's great? Noah said the sound's great. Does that mean the sound's great, Noah? I've just refreshed my comments over here. Sounds fine. Thanks, mate. Awesome. We've just been tweaking our setup a little bit here. It sounds much better in my ears too on the headphones. So, Mark, good question this. And it's interesting that because I was thinking about it, you know, the blueprint sets a, you know, goes to, it's all about setting the dog up out in front so it can lead us to the deer, and going away from setting up a heel first was a really big change I made in my dog training, you know. And you see it a lot when people ask questions online or in dog training advice or deer dog training, and particularly sort of old school advice is first thing first, always set up a rock solid heel on your deer dog. That's the first thing to do. And you know, starting right from a kid too, well, that was something I was told, you know, so get that dog a rock solid heel. And yeah, heel's really good to have, but a heel's actually really easy to train. It's one of the easiest things to train because the dog's got that physical barrier or indicator of you. It's very easy to train a dog good heel and use change of direction. We do it in the blueprint, and when I do it later on in the training system, we can basically teach the dog the concept of a good heel in about 10 minutes, and then over the course of a few weeks we can actually get that heel pretty rock solid and the dog knows exactly what it means, and you just say get in and they just swing straight in behind. What isn't as easy to teach is teaching a dog to walk out in front with a good range that it monitors itself, because once it's out in front, and it doesn't have that physical visible boundary of you beside it or in front of it as in heel. The heel's very basic and clear. Get behind me and stay behind me. But once a dog's out in front and it's hunting and following scent and tracking and looking forward, it has to keep monitoring you and looking back. You know, it's a range out in front that a dog monitors itself is a lot more difficult to train than a heel and behind. And when I forgot about heel and set up that range out in front first, my job in training a big game indicating dog or a deer dog got a lot easier. And there's a lot of problems you can create by training that real solid heel first, and then it makes it harder to train a dog to walk nice and slow close in front to lead you to deer once that dog's got that rock solid heel. Because if you put a lot of pressure on the dog, get in, and every time it tries to walk out in front you say nope, get in behind or heel, and it's always in behind, then later on if you want to teach the dog to walk slow and close and out in front, when you try to if you've already taught that dog a rock solid heel, when you put pressure on it, it wants to drop into heel instead of just dropping back in front. So I could talk about it for ages, but in the blueprint we go to great lengths to set up that out in front first, because that's our dog's main and most important place of work. It's arguably the hardest to set up properly, really, really well, and heel's actually very easy to add on later on, so that's what we do. But there may be times when you want to train your dog to hunt in at heel, and you know, in the blueprint we do add a heel on later too for getting the dog in behind when you may have the dog may have indicated a deer or taken you to a deer, and then you've actually got a visual on the deer, so you want to say to your dog, hey, I've got it covered now, I know where this deer is, so you can get in behind and I'll take it from here. So we set up a really good heel as well. But Mark's asking about what about actually hunting the dog in a heel, so having the dog real close beside you or even a meter in front of you, just keeping it right in tight like that. And he's saying here, I remember that you trained a Labrador to work close for someone in the South Island. Did you learn anything specific from that? Some background work on Mark is, he's saying, I work a German wire-haired pointer in the UK and had done a lot of training using traditional European methods before the blueprint come out. But he used the blueprint techniques to tidy things up with great results. One big difference is that I use my German wire-haired pointer to blood trail on a leash, and I use her to hold wounded deer. Yeah, okay, so he's actually sending her out to run and chase and pull them down and hold them. Which we don't really do. We don't do that at all in the blueprint, but it is common practice for some people, and that's fine. We stalk in small woodlands surrounded by farmland, so we need to move forward as a compact unit, because if we bump the deer, they will be over the boundary. The deer are either there or some other wood. As soon as the dog indicates, it is usually a case of standing still until the deer shows itself. Yeah, okay, so it's, I know what you're saying, Mark, it's all in smaller areas and you can't just go say what we do in New Zealand, and if I spook a deer or wound a deer, I'll just follow it up until I find it, and I might track it for a long way, you know. But you need to pull them up quick, and you're in small areas, and if the dog's indicating, you really need to find that deer close to you. There's all these different things, but anyway, you can use a dog effectively at heel, and it, like I said, it's funny you say that, because I remember recently I was actually out hunting, and I was in a situation with Print, and I just thought, he just ended up beside me indicating, and I remembered back to when I was hunting over my Labrador Tessa. I actually started her off, a lot of her indicating was in at heel, and I'd have her in beside me, and she'd sort of be by my knee looking forward winding, and I'd look down and just watch her, and we'd sort of move forward together, and she'd indicate like that, and it was very effective. It was nothing like what I do with Print and Fly now. Fly's really good at it, letting Fly sneak right out ahead, and she can be 20 meters in front of me sneaking forward, and I'm actually hanging back letting her sneak forward. And you know, she's a nice small sneaky dog. She's got better eyes and ears and a way better nose than I have, and she's sneaky and she's solid on the point. She's got a good sneak and point, so I'm actually better off hanging right back letting her sneak forward excuse me, and letting her sneak forward on her own, actually pinpointing the deer, locking up, and then I sneak forward. Once she's locked up and I can see she's got a visual on the deer, then I can see with her line of sight, I know exactly where the deer is, and then I can strategically sneak forward and place my shot. But there's certain situations where you might, for whatever reason, you might not want your dog out front like that, and you can have him right just in at heel. There's no problem with it at all, you know. And in the blueprint we show you how to teach your dog to heel. I show you how to get the dog pretty tight in behind. I like Print. I like a dog to be able to get right in behind if I want it to. I might have spotted a deer, or I might be, you know, stalking open clearings where the dog's with me, but I want the dog right in behind. It might be big open clearings or a creek with a side wind, and I know the dog's not going to be able to wind deer out in front of me out in the open, and I'm sort of creeping around corners, you know, coming around the corner of trees and around the corner of bush edges, and I'm sort of leaning my head out and sticking my head slowly around the corner, because anyone that's stalked deer, we know, if you don't just come bowling around the corner, because any movement, they'll pick it up so quick and they're gone, you know, so you sort of just slowly come around the corner. And I don't want that dog at a really loose heel, sort of a meter or 2 meters off to my side, bowling around the corner and creating that movement, you know. So I like that tight heel with the dog riding behind me like that for those situations. But you can just loosen up on that, and bring the dog up beside you, pat your knee, encourage it to come right up beside you. And, a dog working with a dog on your side, you can just hunt as normal. And if they're getting a wind of a deer, they're going to indicate it, and they'll be winding, and you can look down and read your dog and know what's coming up. That's what I used to do with my lab for a while. And then I switched to getting her out in front, because hands down, an indicating dog can hunt much better out in front, and you give them a bit of room to move and work, and they can do a lot more, and an indicating dog can't track and lead you to a deer from beside, because it just doesn't make sense. You want the dog out in front with its nose down tracking, and you're following the dog as the dog's following the deer. And winding's the same too. The dog's better out in front. You hang back a bit, let the dog move and work. But in any situation, for whatever reason, if you want to, you can, a dog at heel, if you're in a situation when you're in the open or you're in a small area for whatever reason, like what Mark's talking about, he's hunting smaller areas of farmland and things like that, where he doesn't want that dog out in front in that movement. Again, man, having a dog at your side and being able to look down and just see what it's doing on that wind can help a lot, and there's no problem with that at all. And it's actually something over the next year or so we're going to be adding a few bits and pieces to the blueprint. And that's probably something we could throw in there for sure, a bit of a piece on that. And I might even have a bit of a dabble sometimes, do some hunting like that with print. And you can even use it for people that are struggling with the dog's range, or the dog's a bit excited, or they might be retraining an older dog. It's also a stepping stone between, having the dog on a long line, or a dog that's not quite ready hasn't quite got the control, or it's got some bad habits. You get that dog in at heel, and it's got that physical visual boundary of you right in its peripheral vision, right beside you, and it's not meant to push right out past you. That can be a really good way to just, again, as a stepping stone, to get the dog out in the bush, get it hunting, get it close to deer in the field, shoot some animals over it, keep it under control, and progress forward to it being out in front and then hunting properly out in front. So it can be both. It can be a sort of a third mode, if you will, having a dog out in front, leading you to deer, indicating, tracking, winding, doing all that sort of thing. You've got them in it basically off duty, in at a tight heel, and you can have them at your side, indicating from heel. And then you can use that position as sort of a stepping stone in between doing nothing, or not being ready to hunt, or being right out in front. Mark, to sort of come back to the question, it's definitely something you can do. It can be really effective, and it's a good topic, man. It's something that we could get into in the blueprint, and do some add-ons there. There's some really good stuff there. Okay, so we had I had a comment come in somewhere. I think it was another post, but it wasn't on the Q&A post here. So I copy and paste it and just throw it in so I can just bring it up in this Q&A. I haven't actually got their name here, but someone said, "Hey guys, I want some advice. 11-month-old wire-haired pointer wife was walking on the lawn, and he just bit her for no reason. He nipped another guy up at a hut a month ago, but was a little different. The guy stepped over the sleeping dog and he got a fright. Problem is, wife won't trust him now. Any thoughts?" It's pretty hard to say because there's limited details there, and it's, I don't know what context he's nipped your wife. Is it playful? What was the situation? Did your wife step over the dog? Was it a playful bite? What was it? But the one thing I wanted to cover here, And the same thing is coming up a couple more times in this Q&A is now that you're in that situation, you know, this is potentially serious, a dog that's biting, well, it already is serious, a dog that's biting people. And it could potentially get a lot more serious. You know, you're talking nipped your wife, and your wife won't trust the dog. That's obviously really bad. And he nipped a guy in a hut a month ago. A couple of things. I come down on this sort of thing like a ton of bricks. And, you know, if a dog nipped me or another person, again, we never hit our dogs. We never go down that just give the dog a hiding route. We just don't do it. But very serious commanded disapproval. I'd touch the dog as in, hey, touch it, sit down, what are you doing? Snap it out of it, you know. And timing, like the second that dog does that, the second I see that, if one of my dogs nips someone, even in a playful way, like the second it happened, I'd be, hey, cut it out, and it'd be a big deal. I'd make a big fuss over it. It'd be very serious, and I'd make it very, very obvious to that dog that it wasn't supposed to do that. So that's the first big one here. And there's a few questions and topics coming up in this Q&A where people are sort of saying, "Man, my dog did this, and I was just shocked. What do I do?" And one that's coming up, and the dog did something it wasn't supposed to do, and the guy didn't even say anything. And he just said, "The other day my dog jumped off the ute and took off up the road." And I'm shocked. I don't know what to do. And I said, "Well, what, did you say anything?" And he said, "No, I didn't even say anything or give a stop command or nothing." And it's like, and this has come up before too. Don't stand by and watch your dog do something you don't want it to do without reacting or telling it off, without telling it that you don't want to do it, you know, and always be ready for it. You know, your dog's always going to do things that you don't want it to do. Don't be surprised. Don't be shocked and gobsmacked when it does it. Just always be vigilant and aware. And the second it does it, just react. You know, it's a big and important part of good dog training and handling, is just being vigilant and aware and having really good timing. And the second your dog does something like that, say, "Oi, what the hell are you doing? That we're not doing that. It's not acceptable." You know, it's really, really important, and really good timing, like straight away. You know, and you know, granted, it's some of these dogs, it's the first time people are training a dog, and it's something that comes with experience. Like you watch people that have been around dogs a lot, and man, you learn to recognize it, and you learn to preempt it too. You learn to read when it's going to happen, and you're almost jumping on it, you know, giving that big command of disapproval, or pushing their bum down and walking up to them and you know, telling them, "Oi, cut it out, sit down," and walk up to them and say, "What are you doing? Cut it out. You're not allowed to do that," you know. Then put them away. Lock them. If the pup did that on the lawn, run up and nip your wife, I'd say, "Oi, cut it out," and I'd walk up, stand over it and say, "What are you doing?" and lock it up. It's really important, you know, and again, it's something you learn over time, and you get better at reacting to it. So that's the first one, is pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want, and reading and timing of that pressure, and so seeing when it's coming and hit it right on the head, you know, like right when it, timing. As soon as the dog does it, big loud command of disapproval, make a massive deal out of it so the dog knows that you're not meant to do that. And the second thing, and so now that your dog's done stuff like that a couple of times, you know there's the potential for it, so you should be watching it, and now you're ready to react. You might have missed it once or twice, but now you want to be right onto it. And the second thing is once a dog's doing something like that, if it's done it once or twice, you really want to try and eliminate the chance of it happening again. So eliminate the situation. So your dog's nipped your wife like that. It nipped another guy for stepping over him in a hut. First of all, a big one for me, as soon as I hear that, I think, like, I wouldn't have a dog, even a dog that I knew was 100% fine and friendly and all of that. I wouldn't have a dog in a situation where someone's having to step over it in a hut, you know, or in camp. I always have my dogs tucked away in the corner, and that's why in the blueprint we actually show you, we go over kenneling right from the start, setting up proper separation right from the start, so the dog's actually happy and comfortable being isolated out on its own. In a lot of ways, they're actually better off over in their own corner somewhere. Particularly, you know, in camp and at night and after and in between days of hunting. They've had a hunt, they need food, water, they need to be comfortable and warm, and then tuck them away. You know, I don't want people stepping over my dogs in camp. And then for me, that's my responsibility to set my dog up in a good spot out of the way, where it can just relax and have a good sleep, and there's no risk of weird stuff happening. People stepping on my dog. If someone's stepping over my dog, someone could step on it, you know. So that's a big one for me, you know. And again, in the blueprint, we show you how to set up kenneling properly, and I show people how to set up a dog not only in a kennel and run, but so the dog can go on a chain and it's happy and comfortable on a chain. And then we set it up so it's happy and comfortable on a chain, sleeping in random places under a tarpaulin. And that's the reason we do that, because if they're hunting dogs, you're going to be taking these dogs on hunting trips to all these different places. You could be people that are following the blueprint all around the world, and there's different situations in different countries and different places all over the place. But here in New Zealand, we're not, you know, we do a lot of hunting on public land, and you're not even meant to have dogs inside public huts. So when I was making the blueprint, and I'm like, well, I'm setting this up for people to go hunting, and a lot of people following it in New Zealand. So this is potentially going to be a lot of people using dogs that I've trained with the blueprint hunting on public land. So I showed people how to set them up on a chain under a tarp outside the hut. You know, so the dog's like tucked away out around the corner, out of the way, and you're just eliminating all the chances of weird stuff like that happening, you know. And so that's the biggest one for me on stuff like that. It's even beforehand, and we'll get into it again on some of these other topics in this Q&A, is you've got coming down on it like a ton of bricks, actually making sure, good timing, cut it out, don't do that. Oi, you know, command of disapproval. That's all it is. The second the dog does something, cut it out. Sit down. Don't do that. You know, and so pressure on what you don't want, command of disapproval, and good timing of that. Eliminate the situation as much as possible, be very vigilant, but best of all is trying to set it up and eliminate it before it even happens. You know, instead of trying to fix it, it's trying to look ahead and do everything properly so these situations don't even arise, you know. It'd be interesting to have more details on what was the situation where the dog bit your partner on the lawn, you know, why was the dog running around, or what's going on there, you know. So Hayden, what is your advice on trying to remedy my pup who is a tad gun shy? Have followed the blueprint from day one. My lab GSP cross is 10 months old. She's not phased at all by the wooden clapper and is also okay with the 22, but as soon as the 708, a suppressed 708 or the 12 gauge goes off, she doesn't want a bar of it. Do I just go back a step and keep doing more training with the 22? Yeah, you do. There's a lot to this, and again, I'm answering this off a without that many details. When you say she doesn't want a bar of it, I'm wondering, what is she actually doing? Is she running away? Has she run away? Or she just doesn't like it? Or you've got her on a long line? Or you're using the peg trick? Or what are you... I'm wondering exactly what's happening. But a couple of ideas there is, yeah, definitely, and you've sort of answered your own question. Do I just go back a step, doing more training with the 22? Yep, I'd definitely do that. Anytime in training, you know, when we're trying to move through all the steps in the blueprint, we start with a clapper and then ideally a 22 if you've got one, and then we slowly move up. And it's actually very rare to get a dog comfortable with a clapper and then comfortable with a 22 and then all of a sudden have a problem with the 708 or a 12 gauge or something louder without changing something to do with the situation or without changing something yourself. So it can be quite common you can get a dog perfect with a clapper, perfect with a 22. You can even get them good with your 708 and your shotgun in a very controlled situation, but then go out and take that dog pheasant shooting and it's in a new situation now. Instead of being sitting on a stop drill as we do in the blueprint training, or instead of all nice and controlled and quiet with the dog pointing a deer and everything's set up like that, you've got this more busy environment where you're out pheasant shooting with 2 or 3 people and the dog's not used to that situation, and a pheasant gets up, there's none of those sort of preemptive signals that it's had throughout training where, you know, you're carrying the gun and it's used to that situation. You've moved through it step by step and you've said sit and you've walked back, and the dog knows the whole routine and it's expecting the shot, so when it comes it's not a big deal. But all of a sudden a dog's in a new situation like pheasant shooting and there's more people there, there's all this different stuff going on, the dog's distracted by another person, next thing a pheasant gets up and that's a bit of noise, and next thing 3 or 4 shotguns all go off at the same time. That can cause a reaction. And so there's that type of thing. You can generally, if you do everything the same in training as we do in the blueprint, you go from the clapper to the 22 and we go through it in all those different stages, going right back from the dog with the clapper till we're right up close to the dog with the clapper, and then we start with the 22 from a distance shooting away, then we shoot across, then we shoot right over, then we go to the 708 and so on and so forth. It's quite rare to have a problem going to a bigger gun without changing one of those other variables, without going, oh, okay, so the dog's good in that situation with the 22, and then you do the exact same thing with a 708 and all of a sudden the dog's scared of it just because it's louder. It's usually because you've done something different. And you're going, oh, the dog's good with the 22 in that controlled training scenario. I'll now go shoot some gongs at my mate's place and take the dog, and everything's different and the timing's different and all the triggers and setups different. All of a sudden, boom, and the dog, a shot goes off in a whole new situation. It's that situational awareness that we talk about in dog training. You get a dog perfect with one thing in one situation, but it's not necessarily perfect for it and set up for it in another situation. So that's a big one. Have you changed any of the other variables? And another really big one too is, what are you doing? You know, were you thinking, oh, the dog's fine with the clapper and the clapper's easy, so your body language is and everything you're doing is relaxed, and then you're the same with the 22. Oh, my dog will be fine with the 22. And then something, for whatever you were thinking, man, is my dog going to be okay with a 708? You might have had a dog that was gun shy to a 708 years ago, or seen something, and your body language changes when you pull the 708 out, and you were just relaxed walking around like nothing's going on with the clapper and with the 22. But then you got the 708 out and you're looking at the dog and you're anticipating something, and your body language is different, and the dog picks up on that and thinks, oh no, something's going on here. This is something, I'm being watched. The boss's body language is different, something bad's going to happen, and then the dog reacts to the shot, and then you react to the dog reacting, and you try to comfort the dog or do something wrong. No, it's okay, and you're trying to you're trying to reassure your dog while it's being scared, and the dog takes that as praise for being scared for the gun, and then next time you're even more worried, so your body language is worse, and you start feeding into it, and you and the dog are bouncing off each other, and the whole thing gets worse. So we've got videos on this, you know, and the whole thing about body language, and it comes back to the principle: pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. And a lot of the times when a dog starts being scared of something, people are trying to reassure it, no, it's all right, don't be scared, don't be scared. But the dog's actually taken that praise in that tone, good dog, don't be scared. It's actually taken it as good dog, be scared. It's taking it as praise for being scared in that situation. And it's all in the blueprint. We hammer it all right out in the blueprint. So anyway, but that's what I'm thinking there, Hayden, is did you change any of your variables, or are you doing something different with the 22 and with the 708 and the shotgun? If you haven't, you've done everything perfectly, and you've just moved on from the 22 to the 708 and the shotgun, and all of a sudden the dog's doing something different, I would take a step back and go with the 22 again, and then make sure get the dog super comfortable with that. Try the 708 again, and make sure you're doing the exact same thing as you did with the 22 with all the same variables. Make sure your body language is completely relaxed, so you're communicating to the dog with your body language that there's nothing to be worried about here, no eye contact, none of that stuff. Not look into your dog to make sure, to see if it's going to be okay, which can cause your dog to think, man, maybe there's a reason that I shouldn't be okay here. You know, that eye contact can mean so much to a dog, and your body language and all of that. So do that, go back to the 22, practice that, try moving forward to the 708 using exactly the same variables and really good body language. And if you have any trouble with that, just let us know, man, and we'll go from there. And there's some other stuff we can talk about and that you can try there. If you've done everything right and you've been following the blueprint and all of that, and you've got to that stage and you're just noticing that little sticking point, I'm sure it's nothing we can't deal with. Timothy, he's saying, hi Paul, my 8-month-old GSP has created a habit of barking whenever he sees cows, and sometimes even chasing them. As we have only just started and still on stage 1. I'm guessing, is that part 1 of the blueprint? Stage 1, is that part 1? I'm not sure what to do as we live on a dairy farm. This has become a big problem. Any help would be appreciated on how to get him to stop. So he's saying his 8-month-old GSP, that I'm presuming is on part 1 of the blueprint, is barking at and chasing cows. And 100,000% it's just completely eliminate the situation, man. If that dog is chasing cows, an 8-month-old dog that's on part 1 of the blueprint, it shouldn't even be in that situation where it's possible for it to chase a cow. You know, Print was either in a kennel or on a long line or in a completely dog-proof area with where he could get up to no mischief until he was about 15 months old, you know, or at least 12 months old anyway. So everything was just super controlled and structured for the first year to 18 months of that dog's life. He was never in a situation where he could chase a cow, you know, and I did so much work with them in sort of every combination of situation in a controlled and structured way, right from a pup right through to 12 or 18 months old, all with a long line, until I could do it all with the long line off, and he was perfect, you know. And Prince never chased anything in his life, you know, and I've never, and the key to that was never putting him in a situation where he could for the first 18 months so he just doesn't even know how to chase stuff. He's thought about it, and sort of, you know, we've put the update in the blueprint where he sort of, that stag down south walks right up to us and then goes racing off, and I'm kind of relaxed just talking to a mate on the radio, and Print looks up and thinks, just sort of slowly trots towards, and I just say, Print, sit down, cut it out, come here, you know. But he's never done it. He's never done it. He's runs around and plays with other dogs and things like that, but you get the idea. The first thing, man, there, and again, this is what I was saying, this is going to come up a couple of times in this Q&A, is just eliminate the situation. An 8-month-old GSP pup shouldn't even be in a situation where it can chase a cow, you know, and that situation where it's barking at cows is probably just a step back from that. What situation is it in that it's barking at them? You know, in the blueprint, everything's so controlled and structured up to a certain age, and then basically the dog's either in a kennel or on a long line with me or in a very quiet dog-proof area, and then by about, I can't remember what part it is exactly off the top of my head right now, but it's about midway or something, 5 or 6 months old. Once we've got a lot of control already on our pup, we introduce them to cows through a fence on a long line in a very controlled and structured way. That's how important all that stuff is. And again, a young dog being in a situation where it can bark and chase at cows without you having direct control of it, it just shouldn't be in that situation. Yeah. Noah. He's saying he's been on afternoon shift from 2 p.m. to 12 a.m. the last 2 weeks, and all of a sudden my pup has stopped obeying commands. Found out today my wife has been doing stuff with her when she gets home, but using treats as rewards. If I persist without treats, will she forget, or have I got a bad habit that's hard to get rid of? So Noah's, he's saying all of a sudden my pup stopped obeying commands. So I'm guessing Noah was doing his training and his pup was obeying commands, and all of a sudden it stopped. And he's found out that his wife's been training it while he's been away, and she's been using treats. And now he's got home and he's trying to do stuff with the dog, and the dog's just like, nah, mate, what? The dog's not interested in listening to him. You know, and there's a lot here. The biggest one is talked about this a lot before, the way a pup or dog prioritizes activities. And if a pup or dog has a lot of fun and freedom, if you let a pup or dog run around and chase cows and run around with your kids all off the long line and tear around with other dogs and dig holes and leave it out on its own to just tear around and do all its own thing the whole time, a lot of self-gratification and all of that, and then you come home, put a long line on it and try to do sit drills with it, the pup's just like, man, this is the boringest thing I've done all day. I've been having fun all day, and you come home and do this stuff with me, and it's just not interested. It's a low priority activity for the dog. Versus if you keep everything controlled and structured, a lot more kennel time. Again, just control and structure. Training and interaction with you, and doing drills and scent work and stop drill and all of that and range work, that needs to be the most fun and interesting thing that dog experiences in its first 12 or 18 months. If you're serious about having a really good dedicated deer dog, big game indicating dog, for that first year, its most interesting thing is working and training with you. And then you switch that from working and training with you to working with you hunting deer, and that's what that dog thinks about, and that's what it's obsessed with, and that's what it wants to do. Your dog, your wife can and your kids and other dogs and everything can 100% spend time with that pup or dog. Your wife can have it on a long line, and we have lots of couples and families that all train together and all do the same things. But it is important that you all do the same things. And you know, usually when couples train together, it works very, very well. They've been happening very differently with that dog. If it was making progress and all of a sudden it won't even listen to you, I would even hazard a guess that it's probably been doing more than just training while you've been away. It's probably been running around doing all sorts of stuff. And you bring up treat training there. You know, it's another huge subject, and treat training can work, but there's a good saying that people talked about. I can't remember where I first heard this. I think probably the first time I heard this was Clark Reed saying it somewhere in an article or on a forum or something. That you could say the same for treat training and collars, but it's a huge generalization. Both treat training and collars, electric collars, both have their uses, but most of them are generally very specialized, and those specialized uses are often for fixing problems that potentially shouldn't have even happened in the first place, particularly with an indicating dog. But the saying is that, and with training a dedicated big game indicating dog, a dog that's not like a pig dog that's running out and running free and hunting on its own and all of that sort of thing, a dog that you can keep close to you the whole time and train on a long line and all of that, for that type of application, then here's the saying, once you understand how to use treat training and electric collars properly, you realize you don't need them anymore. Because once you understand a dog training and the way they work and think and the way you can train them and handle them well enough to understand how to use an electric collar and treats, you sort of go, oh, hang on, I don't even need them anyway. And you don't, you know. That's one part of it. And a big part of the reason why I don't use them, why I don't like using treats, is it's putting something between you and your dog. It's giving your dog something else to focus on and work for. and 100%, you may be able to get a pup or dog sitting better and faster with a treat while you've got the treat. But it can cause all sorts of other problems, and that's a classic example of it where the dog's sitting for the treat, it's focusing on the treat, it's not really focusing on the person, and then you come along in a different situation and it doesn't even want to listen to you because it's a low priority activity. The pup's reordered. That dog's, if it was listening to you and now it's not, that pup's reordered the way it's prioritizing activities, and you've become a low priority activity without a treat, and it just doesn't want to listen to you. And it's thinking, man, what I was doing earlier was way more fun than this. There was way more in it, so it doesn't want to do it, you know. And that's a classic example of why I don't like doing it. And to me, good dog training is all about building that relationship and bond with the dog without treats, and it's doing it for you, you know. And it takes a lot more thinking and thought and understanding, and but that's what gets the real result. So that's my take on that. It says, if I persist without treats, will she forget? Or have I got a bad habit that's hard to get rid of? Excuse me, I've got a bit of a croaky voice here. Something you've got to stop whatever's going on while you're not around with that dog that's caused it to stop paying attention to you, you know, and you've got to come back to all doing the same stuff. Your partner, we've done massive big whole, there's like a whole 1 or 2 hour Q&A on this, all talking about how couples can train together, and a lot of people say how much they love the blueprint for that, is they can both watch it and they can both do the same stuff, and their partner can spend all this time with the dog while they're away, and the kids can as well, and their other dogs can as well. But it's all about following those guidelines that are in the blueprint. And I mean, treat training and whatever your partner's doing is obviously going way outside of that. So it's going to cause problems, you know. So the solution for you, Noah, is really just coming back to the program, sticking to the program, you know. And your partner can get involved and it's good, but you got to stick to the program. You really do. Nick would like my thoughts on alert barking, as he's having a lot of trouble with it. We've talked about this before. He's saying he's resorted to a Garmin bark collar. He's cut out her freedom, even though she is not allowed inside. Have been tying her up at work crate with training and exercise. There's a bit of other stuff. She's mint with most training and exercises I do. This is my first dog, and I think the problem is more complicated than I think. I don't think it is more complicated than you think. I just don't think it is. But we'll get into that. I'm not expecting a miracle cure for her alert barking. Just your thoughts and a road to go down, as I know consistency and hard work are a key. And I've just said how old and exactly what's happening. I need more details. And he said she's 13 months old. Why head, and then that was the next question. "13 months old, it can be anything from hearing neighbours next door, she'll bark, or if someone walks up the driveway, she'll bark. She'll bark at them with her tail wagging. So she's just doing an alert bark, whoa, 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 and then going up for a pat, which is it's a real Vizsla trait. That alert barking, and the happy, Miko doesn't. My dog, Vizsla Cross Miko, anything that happens, she does do it. She does, not the whole time, but occasionally, and they do it, they're silly with it. They'll be asleep, and they'll hear something, and they're waking up barking before they even know what they're barking at. And there's a very typical style of bark. And Nick even put a video there, and it's just a typical, Vizsla alert bark. And it's his, he said here, here's a video of his dog barking when his missus walked around the back and she arced up, and she's just sitting there, and she just does a bark as she realizes something's happening. It's just like it's a real sort of bay. It's like a whoo. And then she gets up and her sort of tail's wagging straight away, and she's walking over to his missus that's coming around the back, And so let's have a talk about this. So again, it is a real trait. It's a real Vizsla trait, really is. And I know people that have had good indicating dogs that they've used for a long time. I know of one guy that was a full-time professional hunter, a really good hunter with really good dogs, and we're having a laugh about it one day, talking about his dog, and he said, his dog still does it, and he'll be sitting there having lunch in the bush after hunting all morning, and she'll be nodding off, as your dog does when you've been hunting for a few days, nodding off at lunchtime, and you don't even hear anything. The dog hears something, or they have a funny dream or something, and they're nodding off, and they just wake up barking. And you can tell them off for it every time they do it, to the point where, so command and disapprove every time they do it. Cut it out as soon as they're barking. And they'll actually wake up barking, and as soon as they're barking, they'll stop, and they know they shouldn't have done it. And you see them like sort of with this awkward look on their face, thinking, "Oh man, I just did it again," and they know they shouldn't. It's like a blimmin', it's like a sneeze or a hiccup, they're not even thinking about it, they just do it. It's like a reaction. And so that's one side of it, is a thing, and some dogs just have it. It can be a real trait. In my experience, heading dogs aren't too bad for it. I've never had a heading dog that's done it. 100% heading dogs will bark. Print will bark when something really happens around the place. Someone comes walking up the driveway or something, an unusual car or unusual person turns up. But that really just reaction thing is a real strong in Vizslas, same as GSPs, Wire-hairs, and plenty of other breeds. But any dog can do it. It's just that typical alert barking that's letting you know something's happening. And again, I said the same theme's going to come up a few times. You're not too bad, Nick, in that video you sent me, and you do say, cut it out, but you do it, the dog barks once, it gets up, it barks again, and then you go, cut it out, and then you let it walk over to your partner, or you let it continue doing what it's wants to do, So in this case, first thing first, again, eliminate the situation as much as possible. If I keep seeing a situation arising, if it's a time of day where, you know, say, okay, I'm getting back from work at 5 and I'm letting all my dogs out and they're all hanging around in the section, and most afternoons Miko's starting to bark at stuff that's happening out there, then first thing on my mind is trying to eliminate that situation. Do I need to take Miko for a walk when I get back so she's had her training session then, and then she can come back and spend that time in the kennel, so she's just isolated from a little bit, so she's not marching around patrolling the place as much? Or, you know, I'm always trying to think, how can I eliminate that situation as much as possible? How can I get that dog out of that situation in which it's failing? That's always the first thing. And even before that, instead of waiting for something to happen, I'm always thinking about, what's my dog doing? What am I going to do with my dog next? What's my dog doing tomorrow? What are they doing now? What are they doing in 5 minutes? And where's that going to lead them? And what are they going to end up doing in that situation? You know, and that's why good dog trainers, particularly when you're talking about, you know, hunting dogs, working dogs, bird dogs, sheep dogs, that type of genre, almost without exception, the top trainers are always huge on kenneling. You know, what, as soon as your dog's doing anything, well, why wasn't it in a kennel? It's a very, very strong theme amongst top dog trainers. It really is, you know. So that's always the first thing, is why was my dog even in that situation? Then if it is in that situation, or that a dog starts doing things that I don't want it to do while it's in that controlled situation, while I'm hunting or while I'm on a long line or while I'm sitting right there with it watching, and it does something, the second it does it, man, that first bark, instead of she barked once, then she got up, then she barked again, then you said, hey, it's that first bark, man, as soon as she does it, and more pressure. So that first bark, I'd say, cut it out. And then if she didn't cut it out and she kept getting up and marching over and she kept that thought in her head and proceeding with that whole train of thought, I'd walk up to her, touch her on the bum, or touch her on the side. Hey, get her attention, get her to turn around and look at me, tell her to sit down, get her eye contact on me, and just say, cut it out. What are you doing? And then release. And then once she's looking at me and she's not peeking out on your missus walking around the corner and barking and being silly, then you can give her a pat. Good girl. This is how you're supposed to act in this situation. Move away from her. If she gets all silly again and looking at the distraction and wanting to bark, say, no, cut it out. And then when she relaxes again, give her a pat. Pressure on what you don't want, praise on what you do want. And just instant timing, man, right on that's what I'm saying about hit it right on the head. The second that you should be going, like halfway through that first bark. And once you see a pattern of your dog doing these things, you can even set it up and say to your partner, say, look, I'm going to bring the dog around here. I'm going to sit down. We're going to try to do this, you know, once a day or 2 or 3 times a week. Set that dog up in a situation where you know she'll probably do it. I'm guessing that's probably why you're filming it there. You set it up and you know she's probably going to do it. Set it up in that situation. And this, as soon as she barks, give her that command of disapproval. Tell her to cut it out. Try to get her focus on you. And then praise her when her focus is on you and she's relaxed in that situation. And, you know, and you really can get on top of these things. And there's a lot of things like that, you know, like Miko's got the, that warning bark. What are we calling it? I'm having a brain seizure. I'm just reading here. Alert barking. That's it. Brain stopped working. Miko's got that alert barking chip, you know, and just every time she does it, I might be sitting inside, or she's only really free in the section when I'm right here inside, and every time she does it, I go, straight away, and I walk out there and I say, cut it out, and she's looking at me, and she knows she's not meant to do it, you know, and I always put pressure on it. And it hasn't turned into a big issue, but it could have if I had to keep setting her up to fail on it and my timing wasn't right. Other classic cases of this, Print had the whining chip, you know, early on. Indy had that too, Fly didn't. And some lines of heading dogs can have that. When something's happening and they're sitting there and they want to be moving, they have that real quiet whine. GSPs can have that too, just that real quiet under their breath whine, and it can be hard to get on top of. And it's just a reaction. And they get to the point where they know they shouldn't do it, but they're still doing it. And you just got to be right on it. You got to try to eliminate the situations in which it happens and correct it the second it happens with perfect timing. And then as soon as you see them beginning to not do it in that situation, praise that. And these things generally tend to just melt away very quickly if you do all of those things correctly. But if you don't, any of these things can turn into a real pain in the ass. For sure. Paul Herman. Hi guys, I'd like some advice on my 9-month-old German Wirehaired Pointer. They're up to part 9. Last night I had my pup on the back of the ute and called him down without his long line on. He bolted for no real reason away from me and I felt helpless. He literally had to hop off the ute, walk 10 metres into our property, and he would have been inside our fencing. I didn't call him as I can't enforce the command, but this is really concerning. When he's on the long line and jumping off the ute, he's a lot more sticky to me and calm. He seems to know when he doesn't have the long line on. And when he doesn't, he's scatterbrained. Help, please. Okay. Same thing. First thing, again, it's the same pattern. I'm always trying to think ahead and think, man, this is the first time I'm letting my dog off the ute without the long line on. He's only got to go 10 metres, but this is the first time doing it, so I'm very aware. And the second he goes to do anything else other than what I want him to do, I'm like, what are you doing? Straight away. And I said to Paul in this, I said, when you say you didn't call him when he ran, do you mean you said nothing as he jumped off the ute and took off? And Paul said yes. So he said he's trained his dog. When it's on the long line, it's good. And it was hopping off the ute and going in the section, everything was fine. Either the first time or one of the first times he did it without the long line, the dog went to take off when he stood there and said nothing. You don't do that. You know, and if you've done all your training right, that's why you train, you know, and I've said this in the blueprint too, I've said it all over the place. Don't, but I definitely haven't said it enough. And this is why I'm hammering it home in this Q&A. Don't stand by and watch your dog do something you don't want it to do without saying anything. You know, and I've had this a bit where people just do that, man, and the dog just did this and I couldn't believe it, and I've had it too, a guy saying my dog broke on a deer. That's why we did that update on the blueprint, talking about controlling your dog around deer and dealing with dogs breaking and things like that. It's all in updates in part 12 of the blueprint. And I showed you shots of my dogs breaking and me stopping them. But it's that same thing, man, always being vigilant and watching your dog. And the second it goes, you're always trying to eliminate any situation in which your dog could fail. You're trying to think ahead. In part 1, I said always think about what you do before you do it. You know, always thinking a lot and thinking ahead. And that's why I say it's always good to watch ahead in the blueprint too, so you know where you're going and you're thinking about it. ahead of time and always thinking, man, what am I going to do with, what's my dog doing now? What's it going to be doing in 5 minutes? What's it going to be doing this afternoon? What's it going to be doing tomorrow? And how's that going to affect it? What could it do wrong in that situation? And everything's set. If you look at the blueprint, that's the whole thing with kenneling and a long line, is that, and you do it all correctly, the dog just can never fail. It can't get it wrong. Everything we do. And that's the key. It's set up to succeed all the way through until it's basically just doing everything in the way you want it to do it, and it's just succeeding in that, and it likes that, and then that's all the dog wants to do, you know. But as you're doing things like taking the dog off the long line, or beginning hunting, or beginning freedom sessions, or the dog starting to spend time with your family, or hopping off the truck without the long line, on any of these things, don't stand by and watch your dog do something wrong without saying anything. As soon as it does it, and the thing is with that, the better job you do with all this stuff, and the more vigilant you are and disciplined you are and controlled and structured with the way you raise and train your dog, and you barely ever set up to fail, and when you get your timing bang on, and you're almost preempting it, you're thinking, man, this is the first time I let the dog off the back of the truck without the long line on, and I'm watching that dog, and I'm not waiting until it's like turning and heading the wrong way. I'm watching its eyes, and I'm watching its eyes and its ears for like it thinking about going the wrong way, and hitting it right on the head, right, get the timing bang on, and you don't need to put much pressure on. As soon as the dog leans to go the wrong way, you go, and you step in, and the dog goes, okay, I won't do that. And then the second it swings around and begins going the right way again, you go, good dog. And the dog, you stop it from going the wrong way with a bit of well-timed pressure, and as soon as the dog goes into the section without its long line on, everything's good, you give it a pat. And it's very clear to the dog, I'm not meant to do that, but if I just go this way, the boss is happy and and life's good. And that's basic. That's dog training. That's good dog training, you know. So that's again, it's the same things. Trying to think ahead, trying to eliminate that situation before it even gets there. If it does happen, correct your dog straight away. Praise them as soon as they're doing it. Don't always correct the bad stuff. Every time you correct something wrong, you go, don't go that way. Come over here. And then when they come, you go, good dog. You're always giving them that positive option and showing them what you do want them to do. Very important that you're not just, don't do that. No, don't do that. No, don't do that. It's no, don't do that. Come over here. Good dog. This is what you're supposed to do. That positive alternative is very important. It's 50-50, man. You can't praise or train a dog perfectly with only positive, and you can't do it with only negative. Jamie, this is an interesting one. Jamie Lee had a bit of a panicked comment saying all of a sudden Digby has gone from having a stop command pretty solid. His range was looking awesome, and he was quietening down at home as well. In the last week, I can't even take him for just a normal walk without him trying to pull away. And I try and correct him by making him turn around in the other direction and then back again, but he won't. But we end up just walking in the same line, going nowhere. The trainings are starting to get really negative because he turns into a complete nutcase, sometimes even barking at me. He's whining heaps during the day. He's fine during the night. He is jumping on other people and he gets extremely excited. I have to hold on to the long line now, and just everything just completely turned to custard for her. And she says before that, he's been textbook, and it says, WTF, help. What the F, help. And I had a bit of a laugh. And I said, okay, calm down. It's definitely not the dog, which is good because it can be fixed. And she sort of said, ha ha, thank God. And I said, he's just a mirror reflecting back what you're doing. So if you get pissed off, so will he. If you calm down and slow down and do everything properly, so will he. And Jamie messaged me a couple of days later saying, everything's mint. I was kind of being a dick. And it was all her. And she said all of a sudden he's back going perfectly again. And so basically Jamie's training was going sweet. Everything was mint. You know, she's had her challenges off and on. Digby's a young male GSP. You know, they can take a bit of work. Definitely not always regarded as GSPs 100% aren't the easiest dogs to train. They're just not. It's common, you know, it's not. But she's been working really hard and asking a lot of questions and doing really well and making a lot of progress and having her challenges off and on, but also having her big wins and making a lot of progress and beginning to have some sessions where everything was going really well. And then all of a sudden everything just turned to shit and he just wasn't doing anything right and it was a massive pain in the ass and everything got worse. And I said, remember your dog's a reflection. Remember, he's just a mirror reflecting back what you're doing. So if you get pissed off, so will he. If you calm down and slow down and do everything properly, so will he. And it's so true. It's so common. And I've said this before too. It's just never the dog's fault, you know. And you can never look at it as if it's the dog's fault. And if the dog's a dog and we're a human, you know. And so to place blame on a dog, it just doesn't make sense. The smartest dog has about the IQ of a 3-year-old human. So literally to place any responsibility on the dog, or get pissed off at the dog, or say he's just not doing it right and he just won't learn, or it's just this or that. It's like getting pissed off at a 3-year-old baby and saying, this 3-year-old kid just won't get it. You know, they're not responsible enough. You know, that's an adult. That's like about as smart as a dog gets, too, let alone a young GSP pup. So as a dog trainer, it's very important to realise that the dog's just a dog. That's about as close as you can get to measuring it, that its IQ is probably similar to a 3-year-old baby. Then it's the smartest dog. But their brains work completely differently to a 3-year-old human too, and they can't reason and rationalise the same. They can have good pattern recognition, and they're very good at reading body language and different things. But because of this, it's our job as a dog trainer to go, okay, it's a dog, I'm the human. If my dog's doing something I don't want it to do, then it's up to me to sort it out. You know, and it's always something that, you know, I'll talk about it myself. Anytime my dog isn't doing something the right way, or it's doing something I don't want it to do, or things aren't going the way I want them to go, I'm always turning back on myself and going, what have I done to create this? What can I change to change it? What can I do differently to make it better and fix the problem? It's always back on me. And very, very important. And frequently, you know, I'll be a little bit distracted or busy or doing something with the dog, and I look down and my dog's doing something I don't want it to do, and I have this sort of reaction that, oh, what the hell are you doing, dog? And then I always have to stop myself and go, hang on, what have I been doing for the last 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 3 days or a week or the year, or what have I done with this dog the whole time to cause it to do that? You know, and it's always me. Because the dog's a dog. It's always my responsibility, and it's always going to be up to me to fix it too, you know. So, and it's very rarely that when you look at it that way, that you can't come up with something and fix it, you know, and make it better. And the flip side of that is, if you're not willing to look at it that way, it's generally very difficult to fix it, because you won't fix it until you work out what you can do about it, you know. Yeah, very important sort of subject and thing to always have in the back of your mind with dog training. That. Aaron, hi Paul, would you recommend starting a dog first hunt during the roar, or wait till after the roar? Would a stag coming in close, making a lot of noise, probably be too much for a young dog? This is a really good subject. It's a timely one too. We're end of February, the roar's in 3 or 4 weeks. And, you know, there's a huge amount of variables there too. And it all depends. But generally, in short, super short answer is, I don't think the roar is necessarily the best time to start a big game indicating dog or a deer dog. It's not, you know. I think the best time to start a dog, if we're talking about New Zealand hunting, and I'm always mindful of the fact that we've got a lot of people in a circle and following the blueprint and listening to these free videos in other countries, but I'll use New Zealand as an example here. I think the best way of starting a dog, and it's how we do it in the blueprint, how we have a talk about it a lot, and a lot of recommendations there, and then I actually go out and do it, and I'm hunting and filming and doing it in the field and explaining what I'm doing and why I'm doing it in regards to starting a dog off. I think bush stalking, even if you're intending to do a lot of long range hunting over a dog or hunt in different ways, bush stalking over a dog, and in New Zealand, with our rules and regulations and everything, or lack thereof, basically we can kind of do what we want in a lot of ways. I like in New Zealand starting off hunting a dog bush stalking in the winter, where I'm not gonna, and even more ideally, I'd like to do it in an area where, you know, I don't want to like leave a young stag to get older, and I don't want to do it in the summer when I want to be leaving hinds, because they might have fawns at foot and that sort of thing. I'd love to go winter bush stalking in the Kaimais or the Uaweras or somewhere where I'm basically I'm looking to just shoot a deer, and winter bush stalking is perfect because all the stags are in hard antler, the fawns are weaned, all that sort of stuff, and I'm looking to hunt and shoot the first couple of deer my dog takes me to. That's the ideal situation, and the reason I like bush stalking over sort of long range, it's fine to start your dog off long range hunting. At the end of the day, there's 100 different ways of doing it. But it is good to start a dog off in that situation where it's tracking and winding deer, and indicating them, and you're stalking them at close range, and it's stalking live deer on the hoof first, you know, deer that can get up and run away and things, rather than shooting a lot of long range animals, and those first few deer your dog's sneaking up to is laying on the ground dead. That can teach a dog to be a bit relaxed on that approach. You know, an ultimate big game indicating dog is a dog that can sneak in, stalk in, whether it be on the wind or tracking or by sight or sound and all of the above, on a live animal, you know, and it's really good to set that up right off the bat, even if you're intending just to use your dog for long range hunting and other things later on, because what if you wound a deer and it's still on its feet after the shot? Then I want my dog to know how to track and sneak in and indicate and lock up on a live animal that I need to put another shot on, you know. And we sort of talk about this in the blueprint and show you how I do it. And I shoot a good few deer over print in the bush and get them used to dealing with deer on their feet and winding them and tracking them, and using scent rafts and switching from tracking to winding and winding to tracking, and quite a few different variables, and then I shoot a long-range deer over him and he takes me to that. And that bush stalking stuff sets up all of those advanced skills that a dog will ever need for any situation tracking up after the shot, you know, including tracking up a wounded animal that's still on its feet, you know, and the dog's going to be steady and taking you to it and all of that. So that's a big part of that. And, you know, yeah, just the roar. Obviously, you got stags roaring, making lots of noise. You got animals running in on you. You've got all those different things, you know. That's not necessarily the best way to set a dog up. I want to set a dog up, like I said, bush stalking, winding, tracking, hunting animals on its feet, and ideally, I want to be in a situation at a time of year in a place where I'm set up that I'm not going to have to be turning animals down, that my dog's taken it to its first couple of deer, doing awesome finds, whether it's tracking or winding and pointing, and I'm like, oh no, it's a hind with a fawn, I've got to turn it away, or oh no, it's a nice young stag in a high trophy potential area, I'm going to turn away. I want to be somewhere and go, first deer this dog takes me to, I'm going to shoot it. Ideally, I do that a few times. So for me, Aaron, really good. Then for all of those reasons, that's why winter bush stalking here in New Zealand is an awesome way for me to start a dog off. And another thing on this too is, you know, and with the roar, I get this question a bit, and people say, hey, my dog's almost ready, I'm really excited, and me and my mates are flying in for a roar trip, and I'm going to start my pup off there, you know, and I say it in the blueprint too, and it's best to start a dog off on your own. You can fly in with mates or whatever, or go on a hunting trip with mates, but you don't want to be in that situation where you're following a couple of mates around, or you've got them in behind you and there's all this stuff going on. The dog's trying to keep track of 3 different people, and your mate's saying, hey, let's go this way, or your dog's trying to take you this way to a deer. You're distracted, the dog's more distracted. Really, really good just to get out one-on-one with you and your dog, and just focus on getting that dog off to a good start, you know, and all of that's in the blueprint, all filmed and explained, and doing it all with print in the field, you know, and there's lots of different variables. There's a lot. I ended up, print did some really good indications on deer, taking me to deer, but the wind kept changing, and we didn't quite connect, and I actually shot Print's first deer over him. He wasn't indicating it. He didn't know it was there. I was just coming down a creek back to camp, and we'd been on a few hunts, and he'd been going really well, indicating really well. But I keep missing out on sealing the deal, you know, and it got to the point where I was like, I just want to shoot a deer over him. I was like, next deer I see, I'm just going to shoot it. And I actually, if I hadn't have been filming his first indication or trying to get the shot, if I'd have just up and shot it, I would have shot the first deer he took me to. Really nice indication, would have been really cool, but I mucked around with the camera for like 5 seconds trying to zoom in on the deer, and it sort of run off. And it was difficult trying to start him off filming, and I missed out on a couple of opportunities, and then I just got to the point where I was like, man, I'm just shooting the next deer I see. And it happened, just bowling back down the creek, heading back to camp. I looked up and there was a Seeker deer standing there, and I just bowled it, you know, and took Print over to it, give him a good pat, let him know, look, this is what we're here, this is what we're doing, we are after them. And the next day we went out and he did a really nice find on another Seeker, and I shot that too, that he took me to and indicated. So there's all these things, you know, there's lots of variables, but it is really good to start your dog off. Again, you're trying to set them up to succeed as much as possible, eliminate all those chances of failure, and trying to keep it as controlled and structured as possible, you know. And yeah, stags, deer coming galloping in on you, and, you know, stags roaring, and those big trips with a whole heap of mates in the roar with all that chaos going on. isn't necessarily the best time. So that's my take on that. Todd Hayes, this is a hard case. I won't read the whole thing, but he's just sharing a bit of a yarn where he's gone out and set a skin drag up for his dog, which we do the scent training in the blueprint with deer skin. And Todd's gone out, set up a skin drag. He's gone out, his dog's tracked it up, did it all right, pulled up where the skin should be, and there's only a piece of hair and a feather, and a hawk had taken off with his piece of skin. So his dog did did the skin drag, tracked it, and got to where the skin should have been, and there was no skin there. Maybe you need to bloody peg it down with a standard or something, eh? Can totally see how that could happen though. Taryn. They're on part 5 of the blueprint with an 8-month-old heading dog. He's going really good. Been doing scent training for 2 weeks now. It took him a while to get him even slightly interested in the skin and scent. He has picked up winding the scent, but once he gets to the skin, he walks past it or goes off still smelling the wind. Any groundwork he's not interested in at all. Does not track the scent. When he goes off course, we guide him back in. We have also given him time to work it out for himself when he goes off track. 9 times out of 10, we need to bring him back. When we finally get to the skin, he walks right past it as well. We bring him back to the skin and pick it up. We give him a pat and reward him. When he sniffs it or licks it, so he knows that's what we want. But going on 2 weeks now, there is little or no interest. We feel a little stuck. Do we just continue to work on this winding more so that improves and the groundwork will naturally follow? So a couple of things on this. First of all, it's very rare for a dog to not show a lot of interest in the skin straight off the bat, but it can happen for sure. Can and does happen. First thing, I wouldn't freak out about it. And, you know, it's relatively, well, it's very common for dogs to be very keen on the skin work, follow it up a few times, and then lose interest pretty quick and go, it's just a piece of skin, you know. And I talk about that in the blueprint. You know, Fly lost interest in the skin very quick. She was just like, I'm not sick of tracking this piece of skin. But she's got huge amount of drive on the real thing, you know. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening here. I wouldn't be surprised if even if you don't get that dog interested in skin, take him out. He'll probably show more interest in fresh deer sign, shoot a couple of deer over and give him a big pat, and move forward from there, and he'll be really keen on the real thing. A lot of dogs aren't that interested on the skin, but very interested in the real thing. Another thing though is you know, if he's not interested, and I have seen that too, where for whatever reason the dog's not as interested. I had it a couple of times in doing the deer dog boot camps, and one dog in particular that was he had a big stuff up with water retrieves early on, and he did not like the water. He liked game, and he was pointing animals, and he was into it. He was a GSP, but he did not like water, and I was struggling to get him keen on something and get some drive out of him to get him going in water and get him retrieving. It took weeks and worked on it for ages, and I got him. And last I heard, he was retrieving well, and hunting well, and indicating deer and retrieving birds and everything. But it took a lot of work. But and I ended up getting him going on deer skin. And one thing that really sort of triggered it was he was the same. He was very blimmin' ho-hum about the whole thing, and I started leaving him with the skin in his kennel. When I'd go out, do skin drags with him and things, I was trying to get him interested in the skin so I could get him retrieving the skin. And that's what ended up happening. I ended up getting him really interested in the deer skin, and I brought his prey drive out with that, and then I ended up getting him retrieving that out of water, and then we transitioned that into other things, and it ended up transitioning to retrieving ducks out of the water. There's a couple of turning points with that dog. So I ended up trying skin work, doing skin drags and wind scents and things with deer skin out in the paddock to try and get him keen in the paddock to then transition that to water. But he wasn't that keen. He'd sort of do it and wander over to it and be like, oh, there it is, and then just sort of walk past and not that interested. And then one day we were sort of walking back and he was walking at heel, and he just sort of looked up at the skin. And I actually handed it to him, and he took it out of my hand and just carried it for a bit, and he ended up carrying it all the way back to the kennel, which was quite unusual. And then I just let him have it and let him take it into the kennel and chew it up. And I was a little bit worried about him eating with all the deer here and all of that, but dogs are dog. They're predator for thousands of years, and I just let him go for it, and he'd bloody pull all the hair out of it and chew the skin up and cart it around. And he was quite proud of his piece of skin that he carried home from this scent training session, where he'd shown very little interest in the skin out in the training session. But there was something about carrying it back and then giving it to him in his kennel and giving him ownership of that piece of skin, saying, here you go, mate, it's yours, type of thing. Whereas he had a thing, he was just a funny dog, and he had quite a cruisy personality, which some heading dogs can do, and dogs that don't tend to have a huge amount of bravado and drive around the skin drags and things tend to be those type of dogs that are quite easy to handle. They learn quickly, they're not always pushing their boundaries and all of that sort of thing, but then those type of dogs, that's what Fly's like, and she lost drive in the skin work early on, but then she turned out to be a really highly driven dog, indicating in the field on the real thing. But that was what it was, and it was saying, so he was just a cruisy dog, and he thought that skin was mine and that he shouldn't show too much interest in it. And that it was mine, and he didn't want to go barging in on my piece of skin, and that was the whole psychology thing going on there. And then I started going, nah, here, mate, it's your piece of skin, and giving it to him and letting him take it into the kennel and chew it up. And over a couple of sessions, then the next skin drag, he showed a little bit more interest in, and then I was bringing it back and giving it to him in his kennel, and I even got other dogs involved. And I'd bring another dog in that was real keen on the skin and got him a little bit jealous of it, and then he was barging in trying to take it, and then I'd make sure he won, and I'd take it off the other dog, give it to him, and let him take it into his kennel. And you get the idea. And there was a funny psychology thing going on there, and a thing that he didn't think it was his skin, and he wasn't the type of dog that wanted to bowl in on it. And I worked on that, and I got him to the point where he knew it was his. He was very proud of it, and he started doing those skin drags really well. And I got him to the point where he liked the skin so much that he started a dog that was scared of retrieving, scared of the water. I was also doing a lot of work with him, literally carrying this big dog out into the water and swimming with them, and did all this stuff over weeks and weeks until I got him retrieving this bloody skin. So that's what come to mind there, Taryn, with that is maybe giving it to him in his kennel, and just making sure that he knows it's all right, and the other thing is potentially just, I wouldn't freak out about it either. I never even used to do skin work. I used to just train all the control stuff that you see in the blueprint and then just go hunting. But doing that skin work is definitely very, very good. Alice, not sure if this is a relevant question. We've just started our GSP moose on the blueprint, not very far in yet. We're on a farm in Melbourne. Recently, my sister had her 2 dogs bitten by a tiger snake. Moose is at home alone most days. Is there anything I can do to prevent him from bumping into one? How can I make him wary of them and steer clear? Never been nervous until my sister's dogs were bitten. Yeah, it's quite a bloody serious one, isn't it? And first thing here, this has come up before and I've talked about it before. And first thing, I'm in New Zealand, there's no bloody snakes here. I'm not a snake aversion expert or anything. And then going back to electric collars and how they do have some uses, we do the Kiwi aversion training here, and it is bloody effective. It does work. Some people don't mind it, some people don't like it, but they put a collar on a dog and you walk a dog up to a stuffed kiwi with kiwi scent on it, or even a dead kiwi, and you let the dog walk up to the kiwi. And it's ideal if you let the dog walk up, and they'll genuinely be a little bit wary, but right as the dog is about to touch the kiwi, whether it's sniffing it or about to lick it or whatever, or give it a nudge, that's when they give the dog a shock. And then they set up a course. So you put an e-collar on the dog, and the trainer, people have got to be certified to do this here in New Zealand, and you get your dog certified. It's a certified like a Kiwi aversion certificate, and a certified trainer writes out the certificate and says, here's your Kiwi aversion certificate, and you're now allowed to go hunting in areas in New Zealand where your dog needs to be Kiwi aversion trained. And so the certified trainer puts a collar on your dog, and they have a course set up in some trees or in a paddock where he's got his kiwis laid out, and they might have a stuffed kiwi sitting in one spot where you can see it with kiwi scent on it. And then they might have another kiwi where it's a dead kiwi, buried in a bit of grass and stuff, so imitating like a nesting situation, and a few different situations like that. And you can have your dog on lead or off leash or whatever. I've done it, seen trainers that do it a few different ways depending on the dog and situation. And you walk your dog past the kiwi, and you basically give the dog the opportunity to walk up to these stuffed kiwis, and the trainer's watching the dog. And most of these trainers, or all of them I've seen or worked with, obviously understand dogs very well. They're good dog people in their own right. They know how to read a dog. They know how to use a e-collar. And the moment that dog goes to touch that kiwi, they give it a clip on that collar, or they give it a nick on the electric collar. And it works, man. That dog, that's the first time that dog's walked up to a kiwi and they've gone to touch it, and they get a big shock. And the dog literally thinks that kiwi gave it a big shock. And you pass the course when you come back around, and the dog sees or smells a kiwi, and they just give it a big wide berth, man. They don't want any bar of it. And sometimes you go, and you've got to do it, usually in New Zealand, every 12 months. The dog's got to be redone, rechecked. Sometimes the dog will have a very wary second look, and you give them another nick. But most dogs, once you do it once or twice, you can take dogs back year after year. And like Fly's done it a few times now, and you can take Fly back a year later and take her past that kiwi, and she goes, no, I know what that is, man, and I don't want anything to do with it, and gives it a big wide berth. That's about the only thing that I can think of that could possibly give quite a good result there. If you could get a dead snake, if you get dead snake, some snake scent, and do that, that could be quite effective. I'd be surprised if people didn't even do that, if there weren't people in Australia or countries that have snakes that didn't do that, sort of snake aversion training. And it can work really, really well. Nothing's 100% guaranteed in dog training, and I wouldn't say now that you've done that, your dog's never going to go near a snake, so just let your dog hang around snakes. It's definitely not like that, but that's about the only thing I can think of, and it could be quite bloody effective. And if I was an Aussie, I'd probably want to do it too, Dogs have got good noses, and but that's not to say in Australia and places of high snake activity, I'd say just do that with your dog and take it hunting in the summer where there's heaps of snakes, because the wind could be wrong or the dog could get it wrong, and you know, nothing's guaranteed. Finally, Jeff has said, "Hi Paul, any chance you could put in the video description what questions are answered at what times, like you do in the blueprint? Could help with answering questions twice." Yeah, it's a bloody good idea. So Jeff's saying, basically going through these Q&As and putting it in the descriptions. So snake avoidance will be at, you know, 1 hour 29 minutes or whatever, or alert barking will be at 15 minutes in this video. So yeah, man, it's something we're going to look into, and we've got our new man on the scene, Vinny, which is he's taking care of quite a bit of stuff now with videos and things, and he's going to have a crack at that with this one. Because it's a good idea. It's quite a bit of work. He's going to have to sit down and watch through this whole thing and write it all down. And we may not always have time to do all of it straight away, but it's definitely something we're going to work on. So that's it, guys. Again, big shout out to everyone in the Big Game Indicating Dogs Inner Circle, helping everyone out. It's really cool to see that. It's really cool. And a big thanks to everyone who signed up lately, and everyone on Instagram and Facebook sharing photos and all the awesome stuff out there at the moment. It's been really cool. End of February, man, the fawns are weaned and the stags are hard and the raw's coming and it's cooling off, and it's all that time of year again. So bring it on. Let's get out there. If you want to find out more about Big Game Indicating Dogs or the blueprint or any of this stuff, biggameindicatingdogs.com. Big Game Indicating Dogs on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And you can send us a message or an email or whatever. We generally keep an eye on stuff and actually reply. Sweet, guys. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you later.